scones are part bread and part pastry, and they offer a pastry chef a number of creative options. I started by showing you the fundamentals with basic buttermilk biscuits. Then I advanced the technique with classic lemon cranberry scones topped with a lemon glaze. Now it's time for the ultimate decadence, berry tarts with a honey biscuit topping. A great way to show you the application of a scone within a dessert recipe. So let's start with the crust and work our way up to the honey biscuit. My inspiration for this tart is an English high tea, that beautiful combination of a scone or biscuit with fruit and jam and of course the cream, except it's all built into this dessert. It's a simpler cheesecake style crust. So I'll add a cup and a half of graham cracker crumbs, and to that 3 tablespoons of sugar, and I've melted 3 tablespoons of unsalted butter. Pour that in, and the last ingredient to add is a single egg white. I'm going to separate my egg here, but I'll hold on to my yolk. That's going to make my egg wash for on top of the honey biscuits. Before I add the egg whites, I just loosen it up with a fork. And just stir this to combine. The graham crumbs should be an even crumbly texture, and then you know you have it evenly mixed. For the individual tarts, I'm using small fluted tart tins. So they have a removable bottom, making the tarts easy to take out. And I'll just divide the crumb mixture between them, and then you simply press it up the sides and along the bottom of each shell. So I'll just bake these for 10 minutes in a 350 oven. While those bake, I can start on the 2 layers of the fillings. First, the cream layer. I'm going to use sour cream with a bit of brown sugar. That's going to be under the fruit layer, about 2/3 of a cup of full-fat sour cream. It's important not to use low-fat when baking a recipe like this because it will turn to watery or fluid. To that, I'll add a 1/4 of a cup of brown sugar and a 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla. I'll stir it together now to give a chance for that brown sugar to dissolve. There we go. So in the meantime, I have these beautiful fresh berries, a cup each of blueberries, raspberries, and blackberries. It is important in making this dessert to use fresh fruit as opposed to frozen. It will hold its shape, and it just has that beautiful freshness that suits a dessert of this elegance. I'll stir in about 1/2 cup of a raspberry jam. I stir it gently so as not to break or bruise the fruit. And now to check on the tart shells. It is important that I let the tart shells cool completely before I fill them. So I have a batch already cooled and ready to fill. For the final baking, I want to preheat my oven up to 375 now. So before I make the honey biscuits, I can fill the tart shells. I'll give the sour cream another stir. Now I'll fill the tart shells first with the cream and then top it with the berries. And now, of course, it's time for the honey biscuits. It starts with the dry ingredients. 2 cups of all-purpose flour, and I'm not going to add any sugar to this recipe. I'm relying on honey for the sweetness. 2 teaspoons of baking powder, and because I will be using buttermilk in this particular recipe, I can add baking soda, a 1/4 teaspoon, just to ensure that it comes out nice and cakey, in addition to being flaky. Just a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Sift that together. I have a 1/4 cup of butter here that I pulled out a little earlier, so it is still cool, but it'll work into the dough quickly by hand. And use that same flattening technique that I did with the lemon cranberry scones to work it in and also ensure that the biscuit will have a flakiness to it. Work in the pieces until the flour is a little more crumbly. And as you can see, you can barely see visible bits of butter. And that's really why it's more of a biscuit than a scone. Now, for the wet ingredients, I'll start with the honey, a 1/4 cup. It adds moisture and also sweetness. Just put that in a second bowl. And to the honey, a 1/3 of a cup of the buttermilk to fluff up these biscuits. Also, a single cold egg, and because it is dessert, of course, a splash of vanilla. Now I just simply stir these together. Make sure I get all that honey in there. I'll get a little flour for rolling out the honey biscuits. And this is a great place to use that technique you've mastered, flattening and folding out the dough to bring it together. And once you find it stops sticking, that's when you know it's ready to roll and cut out the shape. And I want to roll it to about a ½ inch thick. So now you want to pick a cookie cutter that fits the size of the individual tart. I have this nice scalloped edge cutter, and so whether you bake these as individual biscuits right on a tray or on top of the berry tart, you really have something pretty here. As pretty as these tarts are, they still need that final level of polish. I want a little shine to be on top of the honey biscuits as they bake. So I'll take the egg yolk that I saved from the whites that I put in the crust, pour in about 2 tablespoons of cool water, give it a little whisk, and this makes a quick and easy egg wash that helps promote a nice even browning and makes a nice shine on top of the biscuits. The tarts are ready for the oven. Remember, the oven's been preheated now to 375 to really cause those biscuits to rise up, and they take 15 to 18 minutes to bake through. Oh, perfect. Look how they puffed up. They virtually doubled in size as they baked. Pop it out of the shell, and I'll just slide it off of the tart bottom, and that little dusting of icing sugar. Just that perfect finish and polish. What an elegant and sophisticated dessert made from a simple biscuit. So now that you've seen the ultimate in sweet desserts made using biscuits, how about we move over to the savory side of things, making some savory spiral scones. When you're adding a filling to your scones, it doesn't always have